Hey everybody, Nevagasak, your host of the Populist Patriot, last live stream for the night, and I am turning in and going to bed. On my personal Facebook page, I don't post politics on my personal Facebook page. However, there was a memory that was posted back from June 28th, 2017, and you know how Facebook will say, hey, you have this memory from June 28th, 2017, and it's this post, blah, blah, blah. And there was a post that kind of raised my eyebrows. And this was reported on the really excellent site, the Middle East Media Research Institute, or MEMRI. It contains all sorts of transcripts and interviews and articles and broadcasts of various radical extremists from the Middle East, both governments and terrorist so-called liberation movements, as well as even their allies in countries like Russia and China. So you had a Russian military commentator, Reserve Colonel Viktor Baranets, who I pictured on this YouTube video, if you view it. He's also a former Russian Defense Ministry spokesman, a rather sinister-looking dude. He said that Russia should deploy caliber cruise missiles to Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela in order to defend their, quote, democracy. That's what the communists use to term their allies, people's democracies, like in Eastern Europe and parts of Asia, for example, decades upon decades ago. Well, he referred to democracy, Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. I don't know what kind of democracies he's talking about. Not certainly the will of the people. Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela are just basically ironclad dictatorships. They're socialist oligarchies aligned against the United States, I might add. So, Reserve Colonel Viktor Baranets said that Russia should deploy caliber cruise missiles to Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela in order to defend their democracy and sovereignty and to point them at, quote, America's fat ass. And he was commenting on possible Russian actions against the backdrop of the ongoing debate in the U.S. regarding deployment of American troops to Ukraine. His statements were aired on the Russia's Ministry of Defense TV channel, Zvezda TV, on June 26. Now, you're probably thinking, what do I think of that? Well, what do you want me to think? Not going to think that's a good thing. I'm pro-American. It's just another penny in the jar to show that the Russians are not our friends. Putin is not our friend. You can't play patty cake with Putin and sign arms control agreements and trade deals with Putin. Russia has a state-dominated economy, either outrightly state-owned or Communist Party corporations that were created and then privatized under the last years of Gorbachev and to Yeltsin. Russia's still anti-American. And no, I'm not saying we should put troops on Russia's borders and no-fly zones over Ukraine. But this was happening before Moscow's attack against Ukraine. Russia, meaning the Russian Federation, its government, the United Russia Party, and various parties that are sometimes aligned to them, like the Communist Party of the Russian Federation or the Liberal Democratic Party in Russia, to give some examples. They're the geopolitical adversaries of the United States. Simple as that. This is another penny in the jar that shows that the Cold War never ended. That Russia continues to be the enemy of the United States, not the Russian people, but the Russian Federation government, led by Vladimir Putin at this point, and the United Russia Party. This is why we need to, I know the cliche, rebuild our military, but yes, we need to have an active anti-missile system to protect the American strategic and population centers, our strategic targets. We need to crack down on the supporters of Venezuela, Nicaragua, and Cuba in the United States as internal security risks. And that can come from the House Intelligence and Senate Intelligence Committees, as well as the Homeland Security Committees in both houses of Congress. Essentially reviving what used to be institutions like the Senate Internal Security Subcommittee and the House Committee on Un-American Activities, which became then the House Committee on Internal Security. Though those institutions need to be revived. And we need to have aggressive intelligence assets collecting information on, and continue to collect information, but also publicize it over a nationalized PBS and NPR, which is publicly funded, in part, public institutions, to publish the findings, to warn the American people that there are internal security risks in the United States that ultimately support Russia and China. Because they want to Red Dawn the United States. They can use the excuses of the United States and Ukraine and this and that and everything else. But the bottom line is Russia is looking to consolidate its alliance of anti-American states in Latin America in an effort to collapse the United States. Jared Nyquist, his lodestar is geopolitics, and he has interviewed for defectors from Venezuela, including Hugo Chavez's former personal pilot, which he heard Hugo Chavez making all sorts of plans on what Venezuela's foreign policy should be, which is to collapse the United States, to make Latin America communist/far left, and collapse the United States ultimately. And I quote this interview at length in my book, Turning the Page, as well as Red Dawn in Retrospect, and also my book on the Perestroika Glasnost deception, or the Gorbachev, Yeltsin, Putin deception. This is another penny in the jar, for the sake of my repeating myself for the 50th time, that the Cold War has never ended. That we have to treat Russia as an adversary, and it's not to go to war against them, but the way to do it is not through neoconservative adventurism. What we have to do is re-strengthen the United States, and it's not going to come through the MAGA movement of Trump Tea Party land. Joe Biden is pathetic. He's all over the place. He's like, okay, let's sanction Russian oil and gas, which hasn't been fully sanctioned, but now he wants to import oil from Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, and Iran. And meanwhile, American oil companies are making hand over fist profits, and most of the investment is in stock buybacks. So they're being as profitable as ever, and they're not willing to drill because they feel they can use that money to make more profits in stock buybacks. And frankly, that needs to be ended. And bottom line is that with Russia, we should not be trading, especially in strategic materials, whether agricultural products, whether gold, whether uranium, rare earth metals, or steel. We should not be signing arms control agreements with them. One of the things I did agree with the Trump administration is the withdrawal from the INF Treaty. And once it was signed by Ronald Reagan and Soviet dictator Mikhail Gorbachev, the Soviets promptly violated it starting in 1987. So Trump was correct in axing the INF Treaty. We should not be signing arms control agreements with them. And we should be limiting their so-called diplomatic representatives in the United States. We need to develop an missile defense system in the United States. We need to develop civil defense for everyone, not just rich people. Because our people, whether rich or poor, are our greatest natural resource. And just because you're rich doesn't mean you should be able to access civil defense. Because let me tell you, a bunch of the multi-billionaires and corporate executives, they have no problem. Many of them don't seem to have a problem trading with Russia, naming one that's against trading with Russia, or making deals with Putin's neo-Soviet oligarchs, or state-owned corporations led by folks like Igor Sechin, who's also a top advisor of Putin and a Marxist-Leninist. I mean, half of those multi-billionaires probably we could do better without them. I'd take 10 steel workers, 10 Walmart workers, 10 teachers, 10 librarians, 10 military veterans, and 10 small business and medium-sized business people and patriotic rich people over a Bill Gates or a David or Charles Koch, whichever one is alive, or a Paul Singer, who I mentioned. I'd rather those people go by the wayside in a conflict and keep all those people underground or in hardened shelters, meaning the good guys who I outlined, which cross class lines. So we need to invest in civil defense for our entire population. It's not something that the private sector really should undertake. If they want to, that's their freedom. Fine. You know, like Barrett Moore, they can do that and serve their clientele. Cool, great. But survival in an attack against the United States, survival, that should be not a privilege for some, but it should be a right for all Americans. So we need to invest in that. And we need to have a fully well-equipped National Guard and regular armed forces to, God forbid, beat back a Red Dawn invasion. We need troop purity, if not superiority, over the combined forces of Russia and China. And we need to keep a good chunk of those troops in the homeland of the United States of America. And we need to expand bases along the Gulf Coast and part of the East Coast and Alaska to potentially meet any Russian and or Chinese aggression against the United States, the continental United States, or in military parlance, CONUS. And we also need to support friendly political parties in Latin America, since we're talking about the Russians, you know, this baronets in Latin America, baronets saying we got to station these cruise missiles in Nicaragua, Venezuela, and Cuba. Well, we need to also support movements in these countries that are not Milton Friedman disciples of neoliberalism, because people got fed up with the bullshit of neoliberalism in Chile, and now they elected a leftist. Same thing in Peru. Now they got Pedro Castillo. So neoliberalism is not the answer. Now, I don't want to be like this ugly American say, well, Latin America needs to do this and Latin America needs to do that. But if we were to support political parties, I would support adherence to the American School of Political Economy as envisioned by people like Alexander Hamilton, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Henry Carey, and Teddy Roosevelt, and people from that generation. And if we bring people to our rejuvenated radical civic nationalists in the United States and they see our successes under such a system, yeah, maybe they could be intelligence assets. Maybe they could be people that can work for revolutions against leftist or as well as Milton Friedman style neoliberal governments and create a third alternative for their own countries. And they're probably the Latin American equivalents of radical civic nationalism probably would be able to be better suited to prevent the Pedro Castillos and the Nicolas Maduros and the Daniel Ortegas and the Socialist Party of Chile from seizing power or taking power even in free elections. Okay. Oh, we got one comment. We got 2 likes. We had a couple of people listening too. I want to thank you all for the comment and the likes and the listens here at Pillar and Ground of Truth Publishing Company. The Cold War never ended, and the hot war will begin, if it hasn't already, by November. Well, God forbid. It might be November, it might be December, it might be January. I don't know. But yeah, Cold War, I agree. That's what I've been saying. The Cold War never ended. And let's just pray that if there is a hot war, that this country survives. And hopefully we can pull together as a nation to hopefully rebuild it and beat back any aggression by Russia, China, and its allies. So this is the last live stream. It is 12:43. Labor of love. Got to get to bed. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you all for staying up late. For those of you who've listened, who've liked the program, Pillar and Ground of Truth Publishing Company, thanks for the comment. I really appreciate that. God bless you all. God bless America. Enjoy the rest of your week. Happy 4th, although I plan on probably making a special broadcast on the 4th of July. And have a great rest of your week, and stay safe out there. Bye-bye.